Maybe your biggest confusion right now doesn't come from a lack of answers, but from a lack of light to see the answers already inside you. Jesus spoke of a light that doesn't belong to the physical world, but to the inner realm. A light that doesn't reveal itself to ordinary eyes, but to the silent perception of the Spirit. Throughout the centuries, many have tried to understand this radiance that casts no shadows, this clarity that doesn't depend on the sun or the stars. Jesus spoke of a light that rises from within, a flame that doesn't change what we see, but transforms the way we see. Philosophically, light has always been a universal symbol of knowledge, awareness, and truth. Ancient civilizations, from Eastern mystics to Greek philosophers, spoke of an inner spark, a sacred fire that illuminates the mind and guides the heart. But Jesus placed this light at the very center of spiritual transformation. He didn't just say that light exists. He affirmed that this light has the power to change the human condition when it awakens in our consciousness. That's why, when he taught, the lamp of the body is the eye. If your eye is good, your whole body will be full of light. He wasn't talking about anatomy, but perception. He was pointing to an inner vision that doesn't judge by appearances, but by essence. Good eyes mean a purified way of seeing, a gaze capable of perceiving with love, discernment, and awakened awareness. When this inner gaze opens, everything inside a person becomes illuminated. And yet, humanity continues its restless search for clarity. We run after answers outside ourselves, as if spiritual direction were somewhere far away, in someone wiser, or in some future event. But Jesus always guided us inward. The light that truly transforms is not in the world, it is in the depths of the soul. The human journey, with all its doubts, fears, and anxieties, is nothing more than a path back to this inner light that has always been there, but is rarely noticed. This hidden light is silent. It doesn't draw attention, make noise, or seek to impress. It is subtle, like the dawn that begins unnoticed. But by the time we realize it, it has already transformed the whole landscape. That is how this spiritual light moves. It changes everything without announcing itself. It awakens without an alarm. It reveals without forcing. And it is in this softness that its strength lies. Plato spoke of the light of truth that frees us from the cave of illusions. Jesus, in his own way, pointed to the light that frees us from inner blindness. Both converge on the same principle. Reality changes when our way of seeing changes. And this is the deep mystery of this hidden light. It doesn't alter the world around you. It alters the world inside you. And when your inner world is transformed, your interpretations, emotions, decisions, and paths are transformed with it. Everything begins with perception. Everything shifts when the inner vision opens. This hidden light changes everything because it changes you. And when you change, your whole reality shifts with you. If this inner light is so powerful, a crucial question almost inevitably rises. Why does it remain hidden from most people? Jesus never said the light doesn't exist. He said few are able to see it. The difficulty has never been in the light itself, but in the eyes trying to perceive it. That's why he spoke of good eyes and bad eyes, not as moral categories, but as states of perception. Good eyes see with clarity, love, and truth. Bad eyes see through fear, distortion, and judgment. Spiritual psychology teaches that the human mind is almost constantly in turmoil. There's an inner noise that rarely quiets down, thoughts colliding, emotions flaring up, worries multiplying. In this tangle of inner voices, the light of consciousness becomes hard to notice, not because it disappears, but because it gets covered. Like dense clouds that hide the sun without ever extinguishing it, inner noise hides the light without destroying it. Fear, for example, is one of the greatest distorters of vision. When fear takes over, everything seems bigger, heavier, and more threatening than it really is. The inner light is still there, but we can't see it because our gaze closes down. Anger works in a similar way. When it rises, it clouds any clarity, like smoke filling a room and blocking the passage of light. And hurry, so common in our modern times, steals our ability to notice what is subtle. Hurry is the enemy of perception. Jesus walked slowly, observed deeply, and spoke at the pace of the soul, not at the pace of the world. His teachings constantly pointed to this inner blindness. They have eyes, but do not see. They have ears, but do not hear. This isn't a harsh criticism, but a compassionate diagnosis. Jesus was describing a common human condition, seeing without truly perceiving, hearing without truly understanding, living without truly awakening. Real blindness is not the lack of physical sight, but the inability to perceive what is happening inside. Philosophy also points to this phenomenon. Many thinkers have said that darkness is not the absence of light, but the absence of the perception of light. Shadow is not a power in itself. It is merely the result of something blocking the brightness. The same happens within us. The light hasn't gone anywhere. It's just covered by the emotional and mental structures a person has built over a lifetime. Modern life intensifies this blockage. The overload of stimuli, notifications, demands, and comparisons keeps the mind turned outward. We live surrounded by screens, distractions, and expectations, as if every answer were out there. But the more we fix our attention on the exterior, the further we drift from the perception of the inner light. Awareness fragments, attention scatters, and a person feels increasingly disconnected from themselves. We all carry inner shadows, old fears, deep insecurities, unresolved pain, but the essential point is that Jesus did not come to condemn these shadows. On the contrary, he came to illuminate them. His light is not punitive, it is restorative. He doesn't expose shadows to shame us, but to free us. Still, the light remains hidden as long as our awareness is too absorbed in external noise or too afraid to look within. Light does not impose itself, it reveals itself. That's why, so often, it only becomes visible when a person is truly ready to see. Readiness is not perfection. It is sincerity. All it takes is a willing heart, a moment of silence, a gesture of humility. It is in this inner soil that the light begins to emerge. And here, a deep, slightly uncomfortable, but necessary question arises. What if what you've been desperately searching for has always been inside you, and you've just been looking in the wrong direction? What if clarity is not something to be conquered, but something to be revealed? What if the light was never lost, only forgotten? The light is hidden not because it is fragile, but because the human gaze, distracted and restless, has not yet learned to perceive it fully. And when this inner gaze begins to open, everything changes, because the world within finally begins to be illuminated. Jesus taught something that echoes through the ages with a serene and yet overwhelming power. The kingdom of God is within you. If the kingdom is within, then the divine light is there too. It is not a distant, separate, or inaccessible light. It is a presence that silently dwells in the human interior, waiting to be noticed. This light is not just a spiritual idea. It is a shift in awareness, a deep change in how we see life, ourselves, and the world around us. When we talk about this light, we're not referring to material brightness or merely external symbolism. We're talking about awakened consciousness, an inner lucidity that perceives before it reacts, a presence that observes, understands, and discerns. Jesus invited us to light this lamp of awareness, because when this light is kindled, everything that was once confused becomes clearer. Everything that seemed impossible becomes more understandable, and everything that once oppressed loses its grip. Light transforms because it reveals this inner light is tied to freedom, not external freedom, which depends on conditions and circumstances, but inner freedom, the kind no one can take away. It is the freedom that arises when you are no longer a slave to your emotions, your impulsive reactions, and the illusions the world offers. When the inner lamp of consciousness is lit, you stop moving from fear, anger, or anxiety, and begin to move from wisdom. Jesus is the ultimate example of this freedom. In the face of insults, he responded with calm. In the face of aggression, he responded with firm love. In the face of moral darkness, he responded with light. This teaching appears in several of his parables. Take the parable of the lamp. No one lights a lamp and puts it under a bowl. That is more than practical advice. It's a spiritual revelation. The inner light was not created to remain hidden. It exists to illuminate the path. It's not about showing off. It's about purpose. Light needs to express itself in attitudes, thoughts, choices, and presence. A hidden lamp represents someone who has received consciousness but still lives as if in the dark. The parable of the hidden treasure reveals the same truth from another angle. A man finds a treasure buried in a field, and once he recognizes its value, does everything he can to keep it. Jesus was showing us that the greatest treasure of human life is not external, but internal, the light of awakened consciousness. Once someone recognizes it, everything shifts. Their values change, their priorities change, their intentions change. The outer world may look exactly the same, but the way they live in it becomes completely different. The parable of the wise builder reinforces this vision. Jesus talks about the one who builds his house on rock. And that rock is nothing less than illuminated, clear, steady awareness. Storms may come, winds may blow, life may move with unpredictable force, but the house stands firm. The inner light doesn't eliminate challenges. It provides a foundation for facing them without collapsing. Philosophically, this light corresponds to a correct perception of reality, not the apparent reality, the one fear distorts, ego confuses, and hurry fragments, but the deeper reality, seen with spiritual eyes. That's why so many teachers throughout history, across different cultures, have pointed in the same direction. When you change the way you see, you change the way you live. Jesus took this truth to the level of the soul. When inner perception lights up, you don't just change your behavior, you change yourself. Psychologically, this light separates the conscious self from the reactive self. A reactive person lives in emotional darkness. They respond without thinking. repeat patterns without noticing, and carry old wounds as lenses through which they see everything. A conscious person, on the other hand, radiates light. They act with intention, speak with presence, and perceive with depth. Their responses don't come from fear, but from clarity. Their identity is not built on emotional turmoil, but on inner stability. When this light awakens, a quiet transformation takes place. Situations that used to trigger despair start to be seen with more serenity. Relationships that once produced constant conflict are now understood with greater compassion. Your personal story, full of difficult moments, mistakes, and pain, stops looking like a heavy burden and starts to look like a path of growth. Light doesn't erase the past. It reveals its meaning. And when meaning appears, the soul finds peace. To illustrate this transformation, imagine a character who lives lost in his own confusion. He keeps making bad decisions, not because he wants to, but because he simply can't see clearly. He sees threats where there are none, interprets situations in distorted ways, and believes his problems come from the world instead of from his own perception. One day, after listening to the teachings of Jesus, he realizes that maybe the problem isn't life itself, but how he's looking at it. Gradually, he begins to observe his impulses, his emotions, and his thoughts, and then something changes. The inner light begins to appear. He doesn't become perfect, but he becomes conscious, and that consciousness changes everything. Another character, living in a chaotic environment, learns from Jesus to look with kindness. Before, he reacted aggressively. Now, he pauses before responding. Before, he criticized without thinking. Now, he tries to understand. Before, he thought his task was to conquer the world. Now, he realizes he needs to face his inner shadows. And in this process, his emotional life is transformed. The light doesn't change his environment, but it changes how he relates to it. And that changes everything. This inner light offers quiet, almost invisible gifts, but they are deeply powerful. Discernment, the ability to see what is real and what is illusion. Intuitive wisdom, the kind of understanding that arises effortlessly, like a whisper from the soul. Inner calm, a rare state in which, even in the midst of chaos, you remain present. Expanded vision, the capacity to see beyond the immediate, beyond the surface, beyond reaction. And the peace that surpasses understanding. Not an outer peace, but a peace that rises from within and doesn't depend on circumstances. This light doesn't remove life's problems. It would be naive to think so, but it removes our blindness toward them. With light, you don't stumble in the dark. With light, what once seemed impossible becomes understandable. With light, what once deeply wounded you becomes part of your maturing process. With light, you stop fighting against life and start walking with it. In everything he did, Jesus showed what it means to live with this light. He saw beyond appearances. He saw beyond words, behaviors, and reactions. He saw the heart. He saw intention. He saw the truth. And because he saw clearly, he responded wisely. His inner light was so intense that it illuminated everyone who came near him. It wasn't a blinding supernatural glare. It was a presence that awakened people. In the end, the message is simple but profound. Inner light changes everything because it changes understanding. And when understanding changes, life as a whole changes. Nothing is more transforming than finally seeing clearly what was once hidden. The light Jesus speaks of is not an abstract promise. It is a real, accessible, everyday experience. It is the inner kingdom revealing itself. It is awakened consciousness, seeing life without the distortions the mind creates. It is the quiet awakening that begins a whole new way of existing. The light that transforms is already within you. You just need to let it be lit. Jesus used simple images to reveal profound truths. Among those images, the parable of the lamp shines with a gentle, indescribable power. No one lights a lamp and hides it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand so that it gives light. The simplicity of this phrase carries a high teaching. Yes, he was referring to a physical lamp, but above all, he was describing the inner lamp, the light of awakened consciousness that lights us from within. This light was never meant to be hidden. No sincere truth remains imprisoned. No real clarity stays silent. When the inner light is lit, it transforms the way you act, speak, react, and live. It radiates naturally, spontaneously, almost inevitably. Jesus reminded us that inner light shows up in the world not through effort, but through coherence between who you are and what you do. It's important to understand that Jesus was not encouraging spiritual showmanship. He wasn't saying you should display your light to be admired. Light is not a performance. Light is a presence. When Jesus speaks of placing the lamp where it can be seen, he's essentially saying, allow your consciousness, your inner transformation, your kindness, and your truth to take their proper place, the place where they can illuminate. A lit lamp doesn't try to shine, it simply shines. In the same way, a soul that is awakened doesn't try to prove anything, it simply lives according to the light that guides it. Philosophy confirms this principle. True light is silent but noticeable, strong but never aggressive. It illuminates without forcing, arguing, or competing for space. It's like a small flame that changes the whole atmosphere of a dark room. The presence of someone illuminated, someone who lives with awareness and purpose, can change an environment without them saying a single word. Inner light shows itself through attitudes, gestures, choices, and even through silence. Jesus also taught that the real light of a disciple is seen in their actions, not in their speeches. Words can be beautiful, but if they're not supported by inner light, they lose their shine. The light he invites us to express isn't a religious concept, but a way of being. Light is revealed when you choose mercy where you once were rigid, when you respond calmly where you once exploded in anger, when you offer understanding where you once judged. Light is not an idea, it's a visible transformation. Picture a completely dark room. A single tiny flame is enough to make the darkness retreat. Light doesn't fight darkness, it simply appears, and darkness recedes. That's how inner light works. It doesn't need to argue, prove, or compete. It just exists, and its mere existence changes everything around it. Spiritual psychology shows that when someone awakens their inner light, they become a point of stability. In tense environments, they bring calm. In confusing moments, they bring direction. In sad places, they bring comfort. The light doesn't make a speech, but everyone feels its presence. That's why Jesus insisted, no one lights a lamp to hide it. We hide what we fear, what is still fragile, what hasn't fully matured, but spiritual light, when genuine, can't stay contained. It manifests because its nature is to manifest. And this manifestation is not noisy. Light changes environments without strain. It doesn't argue with the darkness, doesn't try to defeat it, doesn't need to attack it. It simply shines. And in that silent shining, everything changes. Relationships soften, tensions ease, paths become clear. People feel different around you, not because you're trying to influence them, but because the light within you awakens the best within them. Jesus reminds us that this light, lit inside every human being, can change not only a situation, but entire homes, relationships, environments, cycles, and even destinies. The light he revealed has this capacity to shine on the world from the inside out. And when this light begins to manifest, even if it's just a single flame, it can transform everything around it. Inner light is not an inaccessible mystery or a gift reserved for a select few. It can be activated in a simple, quiet, and deeply transformative way. Jesus showed this through his own life. He withdrew to quiet places, prayed, listened, observed, understood. His light didn't come from personal effort, but from presence. That's why activating this light within you doesn't require complex rituals, only sincerity, attention, and a willing heart. The first step is to become still, not necessarily to meditate in a technical way, but to pause, breathe. Let the mind slow down, even if only for a few moments. Inner silence is like wiping a window clean. It doesn't create the light, it just allows it to enter. In that silence, you start noticing what is alive inside you. Emotions, thoughts, tensions. Light isn't born from noise. It arises in the space that appears when you allow everything to quiet down. The second step is to see without judging, to see without running away, to see with love. Good eyes mean looking inward with honesty and tenderness, observing your thoughts as you would watch clouds drifting across the sky. Noticing your emotions without becoming them. When you see with truth, the light begins to move. Inner vision becomes clearer, deeper, more awake. The third step is to act. Inner light is not just a state of contemplation, it expresses itself in practice. When you act with pure intention, conscious kindness, and true presence, your light becomes visible. It's not about intense feelings, but a consistent direction. Jesus showed this in everything he did. His silence revealed the light, and his actions revealed it even more. Activating the hidden light is, at its core, a daily decision for clarity and presence. It is choosing to see with love, act with truth, and become quiet enough to hear what God wants to reveal within you. When the inner light finally turns on, something profound happens in the human heart. It's not dramatic on the outside, nor is it a visible spectacle. It is a silent change, almost imperceptible to the world, but immense to the one who experiences it. It's as if a new horizon opens within the soul. Life looks the same from the outside, the same challenges, the same people, the same settings, but something essential shifts inside. Awareness awakens. This light strengthens peace. Not a fragile peace that depends on external quiet, but a solid peace that comes from understanding. Before, everything seemed to be a reason for anxiety. Then, a person realizes they can cross inner storms with more balance. The light brings stability. It organizes from within what once felt like pure chaos. Situations that once caused despair begin to be received with serenity, like someone who understands that every event carries a purpose of growth. Light also strengthens trust. not arrogant confidence, but a gentle assurance that God works on the inside before anything changes on the outside. A person stops feeling lost and starts walking with a clearer sense of direction. Confidence arises not because everything is perfect, but because there is now an inner anchor, the light that doesn't go out in the face of storms. Discernment becomes sharper. Before, decisions were made on impulse, in anxiety, or in fear. Now, a person begins to notice subtle nuances that once went unseen. They perceive intentions, understand consequences, and recognize healthy paths and harmful ones. Inner light works like a lighthouse. It doesn't calm the sea, but it helps you navigate with much more clarity. Mercy grows too. A person illuminated from within looks at others with less judgment and more compassion. They understand that every human being carries shadows, pain, and invisible battles. Before the light, it's easy to criticize. After the light, it becomes hard not to understand. Empathy expands because the gaze expands, and emotional resilience is strengthened. Before the light, little things could shake someone to the core. After the light, challenging situations lose their power to crush. The person doesn't become cold, they become mature. The difference is subtle but essential. Hardening creates distance. Maturing creates depth. To visualize this transformation, imagine two inner scenes before and after the light. Before, irritation comes easily, anxiety never leaves, guilt weighs heavily, confusion paralyzes. After, clarity calms, calmness sustains, purpose guides. Light doesn't erase emotions, but it breaks their power to dominate. Someone who awakens spiritually still feels, but is no longer dragged around by what they feel. They still think, but are no longer devoured by their thoughts. They still live in the same world, but are no longer suffocated by it. Jesus is the clearest example of this transformation. In the middle of external chaos, he remained whole. In the midst of accusations, he kept his clarity. In the midst of conflict, he radiated peace. His inner light guided every response, every step, every gesture. Through his own life, he showed what it means to live beyond the impulsive reactions of the ego and inside the wisdom of God. When this light awakens in you, everything changes. Life doesn't become perfect, but it becomes luminous. You stop being led by the world and start being led by the truth that lives within you. And that truth, once awakened, reshapes the way you feel, act, and exist. At the end of this inner journey, a quiet truth appears. This light that transforms, guides, and heals does not come from the outside. It never did. It has always been there, at the center of your being, waiting for the moment you'd be ready to notice it. Jesus didn't bring a brand new light into the world. He revealed the light that had been silenced within every heart, hidden under layers of fear, distraction, old wounds, and distorted perceptions. This light is as ancient as life itself. It is the divine spark breathed into the human being from the very beginning. It is the place where God whispers, where the soul finds rest, where awareness awakens, and where clarity returns. Jesus never told you to look outside. He pointed you inward. He knew that true transformation doesn't happen when the world changes, but when your way of seeing changes. And the inner light is what illuminates that new way of seeing. Now, maybe this is the moment to ask yourself gently and honestly, where does this light want to shine in you today? In what area of your life does clarity long to enter? Which inner shadow is asking for a little more understanding? Which emotion needs to be seen with good eyes? This isn't a harsh challenge. It's a loving invitation for you to let the light do its quiet, deep work inside you. When you let this light shine, purpose is born. A purpose that doesn't come from external ambition, but from inner coherence. Clarity appears, not a clarity that tries to control everything, but one that guides you. And that inner calling, the one that has so often been drowned out by the noise of the world, begins to be heard again. It's the quiet voice that says, walk, trust, stay in the light. And when this light is lit within you, everything changes. Because you change, the way you interpret your story changes. The way you relate to the world changes. The way you face challenges, love people, make decisions, and build your path changes. Light doesn't create a brand new life. It reveals the depth of the life you already had, but couldn't yet see clearly. As we close this reflection, may you allow this light not to remain hidden. Let it shine over your home, your relationships, your thoughts, and your presence. Let it quietly transform environments simply through the way you show up in them. Inner light, once awakened, doesn't just illuminate you, it illuminates the path for those who walk beside you. And before we finish, here's a gentle invitation, almost like a whisper. Share in the comments which part of this message touched you the most. And if you feel it in your heart, share this video with someone who needs light. Sometimes, a single flame is enough to transform an entire night.